So much of the artwork produced in the 20th century that is part of the modernist movement is really rooted in simple geometric abstraction. The love of the grid, a very important subject matter for many artists in the 20th century. And for me, it was kind of fascinating to think about the grid in human experience. How do we use it on a daily basis? And once again, in line with the game playing idea that I've had, I was thinking about the game of hopscotch and how young children at an early age take a piece of chalk, mark the pavement, and then participate by jumping through a sequence of rectangles or squares, and actually inhabiting this, the rigid grid with their bodies. Then ultimately, of course, the weather comes and it washes those chalk marks away. So this notion about this intersecting line is interesting in those terms. The intersecting line, vertical and horizontal, is also at the basis of the way a textile is constructed, the warp and the weft of the textile. Further, every textile is a disciplining of pliable lines. So I'm thinking about all of those things in relation to one another. And I decided to do another game piece that was based on a familiar game, and this is the game of hopscotch. I set out to do a drawing which represented the playing field, with marks representing 4 different games, approaches to drawing the game of hopscotch on the playground field. And again, I'm using the divisions that go back to the very first series of game pieces that I did. And as I turned the image in the first of those game pieces, each of the hopscotch games is oriented in a different direction. So I maintain all of those rules in these games. I produced the center panel, then added the 2 side panels in order to create the sense of a playing area that was contained. And I was actually thinking about taking an airplane in from LaGuardia into New York City and seeing those playgrounds which are bounded by chain link fence. The real world is on the outside, the playing field is on the inside, and some pretty rough neighborhoods surround some of these places where kids play. So to kind of give this a sense of field and location, I developed the composition. And then as all of that was arriving at a point of completion, I kept saying, there's something missing. And in order to explore what might be missing, I took some rope like this, went into the large room next door, and stood up above and threw the rope as though I was playing the game. I played the game as a child, and I thought perhaps in playing the game again, I'd find the answer to this piece. Actually, in throwing the rope, I began to find that it took on configurations that really were expressive of the gesture of the body moving through space. And that is how I finally arrived at the composition of this bead-like element, which is sewn to the acrylic, which covers each of these pieces. Perhaps you can see this is a figure, a head, arms, and legs, boots. I mean, it's kind of like a little bit of a mad Russian dancer or something of the sort. Nevertheless, expressing something of the gesture and the energy that occurs in relationship to the game. And then in relationship to that, I decided to approach the 3rd kimono piece. And the 3rd kimono piece, which also needed a game counterpart, and the fact that I was thinking about that Leonardo figure within the circle suggested to me that I should create a counterpart for this piece. And that's what we see here. A figure reaching to the 4 corners, rendered in red, superimposed over a photographic background. The photographs in this case taken from the original ikat textile that we looked at. This game is played in a way that's quite different from the others, in that each game area has only 4 balls and there's no targeted space indicated. However, so it's up to the viewer to play the game as they will. I hope the viewer comes to the point where they see the figure in relationship to the four corners and arrive at playing a game where the balls are rolled to the four corners within each of the four quadrants, and one plays a game between trying to get the balls to the center and have them move again to the corresponding corners. Therefore, recreating that sense of physical tension that interested me in the first place.